curator of the Division of Vertebrate Paleontology there. I got to know him, and I got to know, of course, Charles W. Gilmore, and then Roy Chapman Andrews came into the picture. And I'd like to tell you about something about Roy Chapman Andrews. If we had more young men like him today, the things I think would be a lot better off. But Andrews was a type of a man that had desires of what he wanted to do. Was one of them to work at the American Museum. So even in his younger days in knee pants, when the time came for the museum to open, he'd be sitting on the steps waiting for the opportunity to come into the building, and he'd stay the entire day until he had to leave. But as time went on, he worked out a process, a program there of his own. He borrowed a dime from a man that he knew, a young person, and he bought a putty knife and went over into Central Park and got a paper bag, came back, and then he was crawling around on the floor of the Smithsonian digging chewing gum up off the floor, which was all right as far as they were concerned. However, time has a way of healing all things or making things different, and so he kept at it and doing little errands now and then, beginning to get very popular with the people. And so one day, as he was down on his hands and knees and digging up chewing gum and things off the floor, he happened to see this pair of real bright, shiny shoes. And he just went slowly up till he looked at the top man of the museum, the curator at that time of the whole division there. He was the director of the museum, of the American Museum of Natural History. And so the director told him, he said, "It's all right, Roy, for you to be doing what you're doing." And he said, we enjoy you being here and so forth, but what we don't understand is just what in the world is it you're going to, what are you trying to do, what are you working at? So he stood up and looked at him right straight in the face, and he said, "Someday I will be the director here." So as time went on and on and on, it came to the point where the director, not only he retired, but he was very ill and had to leave. So the new director was there in his place, in his office, and most of the staff was there to meet the new director. And the man that had been the director, he was well enough to come to see the induction of the new director. And when he walked in, Roy Chapman Andrews was sitting in his place, and he stood up and he said, "See, I told you one day I'd be the director." They thought they was going to have to carry the old man out, but they didn't. And so he went as director of the museum for many years, and he was the one that was instrumental in getting the Gobi Desert expedition for fossils and what they call the flaming cliffs over there. It's the first time any white men or any expedition had ever been in the Gobi Desert. And so his first step was to go over there, and he spent about 2 years by himself and exploring the Gobi Desert, laying out what he wanted. And some of the things they didn't realize were things like little sheds where they kept tools, and where gasoline could be stored, a number of things in various sites and places there in the Gobi. Then when he came back, he organized the expedition to go over there, quite a number of men, which in later years became very famous as paleontologists. And so they did go over, and he was the first one to find any of dinosaur eggs, and that was from one of the smaller dinosaurs, which we know as the Protoceratops. And so he had quite an expedition, and the best percentage of the museums that are in the American Museum and some of the others are because of Roy Chapman Andrews' expeditions to the Gobi Desert. And so I was very pleased to be able to know the man and to be able to associate myself with the American Museum. And so what happened?
I wonder, could you tell us the story of Roy Chapman Andrews how he raised funds to go to the Gobi Desert?
Yeah, I could have put that in there. I didn't think of saying it. Andrews, in order to get the money to go to the Gobi Desert, which would run into the millions of dollars naturally, which he didn't have, and which the museum did not have to give to him, Roy Chapman Andrews was the kind of a man that at the time, you don't find that now, but the man who built and owned the Dodge Motor Company, he went directly to his home and sat down with him and told him the X number of dollars he wanted to donate to the expedition to the Gobi Desert. He got the money, and then he wanted to tell Dodge he wanted to take at least a dozen or so of his special trucks to the Gobi Desert. And Dodge told Andrews, he said, well, that's fine too. We'll see that you do that, and we'll send mechanics along. Andrews said, never mind. He said, our mechanics will be far better than the ones you got now. And so that was just one of the experiences he had on that into the Gobi Desert. Matter of fact, he'd gone over way ahead of time. He spent about 2 years out there by himself in the Gobi Desert where no one had ever been, a white man ever been before. And so he was quite successful in that expedition.
What about Kodak?
And then he went, the other one, he went to Eastman Kodak, Kodak manufacturing Kodak film and cameras and so forth. He went to see Eastman Kodak. He got the money that he wanted, and at the same time, when he got the money, Kodak told him he would have at his use would be the cameras and the film and the people that he wanted to take along for the filming, and he got all of that. All of these things, even with the Sinclair Oil Company, backed him up with gasoline, oil, and material that he would need on the trucks that he had that shipped over there to the Gobi. And he found what's known now as the Flaming Cliffs over there. And today, people who are trying to find that same place don't find it because the information for it and the map to it is locked in a vault in the American Museum of Natural History for obvious reasons. And there were some exciting times that he had in the Gobi Desert. One of them being the fact that the Mongolians there had never seen white men before, and they had never heard of a truck, never heard of a gun or anything of that nature. And so one day there were some of the bandits of the Mongolians that were down a hill there, a short distance from where they were staying, quite a few of them, and it kind of disturbed Andrews because he didn't know just what would happen. Now, if you've ever had any pictures or ever seen some of the old Dodge trucks, they didn't have the big hoods on them like they have now, the big spotlights on each side with a big bar across there holding them. Andrews told the driver, he said he climbed up on top of what hood there was there, hooked his feet under those bars where the lamps were, and he always had 2 pistols with the silver handles on them. And he said, I want you to drive down that hill as fast as you can, right into those guys. And he did. And as he went along, he was shooting those, not to shoot them, but he was just firing those guns one way after the other. They disappeared in a wonderful way, except for one. And that was something else that I left out, that Roy Chapman Andrews would do things that you could never figure doing again. One of the bandits was about his size. He caught that guy, and he took the clothes that man had, put that on him. He put tape to hold his eyes up like the Mongolians, and he used, I think they had some kind of nuts there that he made his face darked up, and he put this camel hair on his head, put this cap on it, and he's the only man, as far as we know now, that ever had the nerve to walk into the Mongolian headquarters right amongst the people and carrying a camera secreted in his vest and taking those pictures. Never been done since. And he was just that kind of a man.